Hmm. I wonder who's calling. Oh, it looks like it's Kaye Jeter. I wonder what she's up to. Hello. Is that you, Kay?
It's me, Phyllis. How you
Oh, okay.
doing?
What are you up to?
That's a big question, Phyllis.
Well, how about a little one? I just saw your name again on Amazon.
Oh, you did.
Yes, I did. So you came out with a new book.
Well, it
And
is.
that
It's
makes it what, number 14 or 15?
no, Phyllis. It makes it 11.
Oh, so the work that you did before that doesn't count. All of those little books and teacher, how does your garden grow and all of
Those
that.
were those were part of the mimeograph and the ones that
Oh,
were passed out many years ago, but they were made into books. But the total is 11 with this one.
oh, okay. So, to what do you owe this prodigious output? I'm amazed and shocked.
It was a struggle being a teacher and um professor in college classes, actually practicing law. It was a challenge because I also was asked to speak a lot of times. And the speaking engagements were very encouraging. There were a large number of people there. And over a course of 25, 30 years, I kept being asked, Dr. Jeter, do you have a book? And I'm like, a book? It was like, that's a lot to ask. And I really did try. This is during the 80s and the 90s. I tried very hard to figure out how you do this. How do you get a book published? And so it wasn't until 2021. And actually, it was probably because of COVID, because we had a lot of time during that time not being able to go anywhere, that you spent time studying. I became determined that I was going to figure out in some way how to publish. So I started, I didn't start writing, I was already writing. What I started was believing that I could write and publish. And so I became a published author for the third time in 2022. And I've been writing and publishing. So then I went back and redid two books that I had done when I was teaching. And I added those, actually had them published again. And so that's where I get the number. But that's not what I'm working on now. So, in the course of dealing with publishing, I got a lot of complaints from people saying, "Oh, you writing books, why can't I write a book?" Or "I want to write. How do you do it?" So, in that whole process, I wrote a book called Stuck on Start. And Stuck on Start is a description of me and my journey in publishing. And so, what I tried to do in that was tell people that you could be an unlimited publisher of books. I mean, there was no limit. I, you don't just want to write one, just keep going. And so, I began to teach classes on how to get unstuck. And then from that one came the one that's coming, that is the second time coming out, called Legacy in Words. And
Uh-huh.
the issue was I was asked about a specific type of book, which is called a memoir. And that was because I was dealing with a lot of retired people looking for things to do after retirement. And one of the things that many of them talked about it, I just want to write. I want to write a book. I belong to a national organization of retired college professors, a Rohi, and it just grew out of that. Then I did that book, and then the next excuse that came was, I don't know how to get started. I know you've written all these books, but I just can't get started. So if you can't start, you can't finish. And if that's the excuse, and I call myself a teacher, I said, what can I do? Now, One thing to do would have been just sit down and write some more books on starting and everything. But I chose, and this gets to what I was trying to tell you about. I have written an app.
Oh, so it should be easy for someone like me who has only written professional articles for journals to kind of break loose and take a look at your app. Tell me about your app.
Well, yes, Phyllis, it should be. And the hope is that it is. This was a challenge because um I really had to study what was causing people not to start. And I know what I found out was the what was causing them not to start was themselves. It was the person. It wasn't any special thing except to them. So I had to figure out how can I release that, help them? Because that's a burden it was a terrible burden for me to want to write, to want to share, and I didn't know how. So that's why I said, I'm going to take one small part of this. There's only one of me. I am retired. I am older. I don't travel around like I used to. I can, but I just don't have that kind of contact. So I kept hearing that writing an app was easy now. And it's true. It's just like publishing. There's been a lot of technological changes and things that have happened. So I set out on a journey this year I actually started in 2025 to write an app, and I did. So it is called the Legacy in Words Memoir Starter App. It doesn't do anything except help you get started. So if you go through the book and the app, you at least have a start to writing your memoirs. And then we can go into some next steps. But right now, I'm just trying to get a lot of people started.
Well, I think one of the hardest things is getting started. But more than that, there's a lot of preparation psychologically, at least for me. Can I do it? I don't know, maybe I'm going to make a fool of myself. And if I mention it to people, they'll say, well, who are you? Who cares about you? You didn't do anything major or important. So why are you rating me a legacy and a memoir of your life? It isn't exciting, or
And
so
that
they think. But, how do you deflect those little things that would nibble away at your self-confidence before you can step out and make the statements about yourself and your life?
and that is so important. I think what helps me is I truly believe that whoever you are, or wherever you've been, or whatever you've been through, and the fact that you haven't told anybody that story is a loss for all of us. Because when you die, it's gone. And what I want to do is at least help you to leave something behind. Legacy means leaving behind something that's worthwhile. And it's not money totally, it could be a lot of things, but the biggest thing is the stories that have never been told and can only be told by you. And for you to think that nobody wants to hear, read, or see is not true. There is always someone, it doesn't necessarily have to be your family. There's always someone that can learn from your struggles. The closest memoir I've written at this point is Stuck on Start. I told my whole story. It was embarrassing to have 4 degrees and still couldn't write a book and still couldn't get published. And I had to admit that publicly. And instead of looking at it as, well, what's wrong with her or why didn't she do it? I did just the opposite. I worked and tried and tried. I did not give up. And finally, I was able to publish. Now, my family has some things that they have a lot of things they can look back at and they understand I didn't just wake up one day and become an author. I didn't just wake up one day and be able to go to college. I didn't just get up one day and become a college professor and all of the things I've been able to do. There were a lot of stories, a lot of people, and a lot of things that happened. I think if you don't want to write and you do all that fear stuff, I think you're selfish. I think it's because you really don't want other people to know what you've been through and that you just want to keep it to yourself. Because if you're able to write about it, oh my goodness, how much better that is for you personally to tell this story and to show what you were able to accomplish. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, I know. I've had people say, "Oh, gee, I really wished that my family could understand why I came to this country, for example, and what struggle I went through while I learned the language or, took another degree in America so that I could advance myself and my family." And my family doesn't seem to be very interested in it. There's a lot of, um, saying, "Oh, mom, who cares about you? You're nothing. You're just a former teacher or you're just a former professor." No matter what, they have their own ideas of who should write a book. And that's kind of scary for them to say that. And you talked about the fear factor. You talked about a lot of things, but there was one book that you began many, many years ago that I know, the Teacher, How Does Your Garden Grow? And then you started a book, and it was a book that was inspired by your mom. And it took you many, many years to finish that book. Could you tell me? I think that was sort of, breaking the barrier and opening up the doors of creativity. How do you describe that experience of writing that book?
Yeah, I
Okay.
absolutely think that it was my writing of that book that opened up the door for me to become a published author. And this is the spiritual side of me. I was able to spend the last 7 years of my mother's life living with her and caring for her. And my mother was, instead of her saying to me, "Wow, you wrote a book," because I had finished one while she was alive. And she looked at me and she said, "If you think you're so great, why don't you write me a book?" And I just kind of laughed and laughed it off. And sure enough, I did not. And my mother passed. And it kind of, the way she had said it and the way she was saying to me, "Don't have these skills and think you're so smart and you can't even help the people around you." Oh my gosh, which is what I wanted to do. So I stopped everything when I got ready to just be serious about it. And I thought about it and I said, she told me what to write about. She wanted me to write a book to teach her and her friends how to pray aloud in public. Now they prayed, but when the time came, if they were supposed to, like in a group, say a prayer, they would just freeze up. These great women that had lived wonderful lives, raised beautiful children and everything, and they couldn't say anything. They said a lot to us, okay, as we were growing up, but
Yeah.
freeze up when they got into a group. But anyway, that just impressed me so, and that was the first published book that I did from scratch and learned how to write and how to put it together and how to just help everybody. It's a teaching book, it's a spiritual book, and it's a book to my mom.
It's a beautiful book, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's listening in today. I'm sorry, Kay. I know people are wondering, why am I still on a phone and you're speaking into a speakerphone? Well, I don't have the luxury of my speakerphone down by my computer, so I've got to rectify that. But I'll never forget, you were studying for a test that you were going to take that would qualify you for ordination as a minister. And you talked to me about the book, and you had it slightly written, how it began, but it didn't take shape and finality until many, many years later. I know your mom's listening from someplace, so thank you very much, Mrs. Manson, for inspiring this wonderful beginning of so many books that have been published. One thing that people don't expect from someone with all your credentials is the variety of the books that you've written. And I'm impressed very much with your children's books. And I was very excited by Starshine many, many years ago. I have it. I don't know whether it will show up on the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I can.
oh, I'm not going to answer that. So we have Starshine. Oh, no, that won't work. We have Starshine, which is a wonderful, beautiful, colorful book. Tell us about Starshine. That was in the making a long time. So
The
tell us.
Starshine is a family book too. Um, when my son, who is now over 50, was in the third grade, and he was struggling at that time, thinking, I'm not anything special, and I go to school and I do the best I can, but mom, I'm not anything special. And I was like, yes, you are. So I sat down and wrote him a book and read it to him. Never published it. Never, he knew about it. And then when I got into this publishing mode, I pulled it out, and then I was able by this time to understand illustrating, getting illustrators, getting a book done. And there are actually three children's books now. But it started with Starshine, and it is truly about teaching children the importance of who they are from within, and then help them with their own self images. But it also talks about some physical science kinds of things. It has a little astrophysics in it because stars shine and how they shine. And does a black star shine? That's one of the things I have in there. So it did a lot of things. It does a lot of things because that book is still out there and people are still using it. It is one that is timeless as it relates to our children. And it's very important for them. I think what you're helping me see is that progression that I've made. So how do you go from publishing books to writing an app?
That's right.
And it, first of all, you can do it. And that's the first thing. If you don't believe you can do it, you won't do it. I was able to do it because the technology has changed. And I sit and hear from various sources, anybody can do it. And I said, well, I'm more than anybody, so let me try. And so, with nothing else, no other piece of anything, I barely knew where to start, but I knew how to teach and I knew what I wanted this app to do. And I knew I couldn't go around doing webinars and talking all the time. That there had to be something people had in their hands so that it could produce for them that starter. It's it's like starting a fire in a grill, and you go out and you buy this stuff called a starter, and you put it on, it lights the fire up. Well, my app is a starter. It is the fire, it is the piece that will light the fire. You will like what you get from doing the app so much so that you will keep going. And I know that to be true because we tested it, and that's the comment I get. Wow, this sounds like me. Well, okay, it does use internally some various ways to get people to explain who they are in writing and who they are in life. And then it takes it and then it gives it back to them in a it just gives it back to them in a way that reads well, but it sounds like them. And of course, we call it magic because we don't know how it's done, but the computer calls it step by step analysis with codes and all kinds of other things, and they come out with it. And then the next thing that I get asked is, well, why doesn't it just write my whole book? Now we need to stop. My goal is not to teach writing using AI, period. My goal is for you to write your story and make it so that people will want to read it, that they can read it, and that it reads well. And for that, there is AI support. Support assisted is what I believe in. The assisting, and that means grammatical things. That means saying things so everybody can understand it. Sometimes you have something and nobody else understands it, but having it explained. There are all sorts of pieces that can be done. But this app asks for your voice. And I do that by getting a writing sample. If you give it a good writing sample, it will give you a very good start for your memoir. Sometimes you don't have a plan, and it's very hard to write a book. For many of us, there are some people who can just write, and don't have a plan. But for us that struggle with just getting a book done,
Mhm.
you need a plan. And one of the things that it will do, the app will do, will suggest based on your input what you might use as your plan. And then when it gives you the type, it also gives you possibilities on how you might set it up. Memoirs do not are not autobiographies. That's the biggest problem
Mhm.
people have. We don't need your whole life. What we're looking for are the high points, the important points, the points that you need to share with everybody, and points that have a lesson and points that have gotten you to where you are. That's what a memoir is. It's a piece of your life, but it's also a theme of your life. If you constantly through your life been able to do the impossible, then we need to hear that. We need to know it. And you can write about all these impossible things that you've done and the things that you've turned around. But to think that you have to say, I was born, and then 2 years later, I went to preschool, and 3 years after that, I was in the first grade, and then 4 years later, I was in the fifth. It's not like that. For most people, that is boring. So, but memoir is really concentrating on the stories that you want people to see what you did and how you did it and how you survived through it, or how you didn't survive through that situation, but it made you better for the next situation.
Interestingly, you have been my companion long distance, though it may be my companion of the heart and spirit, guiding me through some pretty tough times. I know that in your own life, you faced a major challenge, the one I met you during. And I believe that was, well, you tell the story. You can tell it much better. And it was a story of a young woman who had a little baby. And before that, there was something that went on in your life that shaped the direction of it for a long time in good ways, but hard ways. Would you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, Phyllis is talking about my situation in waking up one day, 9 months pregnant, and your husband goes for a bike ride and doesn't come back home because he's killed in a hit and run. And then 4 days later, you have a child. That's the story. And my life story is when you have a change like that that happens suddenly, what do you do and how do you make it, and what are the things that are out there? And that is my story. But one of the better parts of this is being strong enough not only to help myself, but also to, in my whole life, want to do things to help other people. So going through something like that is also something that you can share with others who may have or may be or possibly have to go through something that way. So, yes, all of those shape everything that I want to do. But I think I am most excited about, although we're talking about the memoir and talking about my publishing and wanting you to check the memoir out, is what's coming between something Phyllis and I have been working on. And and that
Are you going to
is
tell all our secrets now?
Phyllis is going to tell you what is coming that we are working on right now.
Well, about, hmm, I'd say 40 years ago, maybe 50, we
Maybe
would
if
call each other. Yeah. And it was a long distance call. And we had several friends that would, join in some of our conversations, primarily one young lady named Gloria. And I can recall that Kay called me early in the morning, like 3 o'clock, and you said, I have just the Bible passage for you, and I'm going to call Gloria and we're going to pray about it. So that happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had a three-way call. And Kay said, you know, we ought to write a book about our conversations over these years because we had been calling one another, sometimes just Kay, sometimes, others that would join in, and sometimes to pray where two or more are gathered, even though it's electronic or electric, two or more were gathered. And this went on for some time. And she said, we ought to write this book and call it Three-Way Calling, or Three-Way Conversations might even be better. So you go and tell the rest now, my friend. What
and
are
so
we doing with that?
and so that's what this is all about. This is like our first attempt at just the two of us plus you.
Hmm.
You're the third person in the call. And what we'll be working on when we do this as a podcast, we'll be working on your ability to send in questions or things for us to talk about. Now, we will not be talking about my books. We will not be talking about things that Phyllis and I have done years and years ago, but we will show you the process that it takes
Right.
for one or two of you to talk to each other and just help each other through things. Or we'll talk about when we've done that, or we'll talk about how we've done that. Three-way conversations are awesome because it's not just me and Phyllis, it's me, Phyllis, and a third person, and they have input into it also. So we're inviting you to start looking for our three-way conversation podcast that's coming. And we're going to ask you to share with other people, and we're going to ask you to give us input as to what do you want to hear about, because between the two of us, Phyllis started with it. I'm going to say we have at least 80 years experience. A
Oh,
lot of
absolutely.
experiences, yeah.
Well, I would say more like 160, but that's giving away too much information. Sometimes,
You must be 100 because I'm not. Oh, not
don't
true.
you do that.
Not
Don't do
true.
that to me.
She just
Don't
told
leave
our
me hanging
ages.
out there. No, I would
She
say,
just told our ages.
there
Yes, she
was there
did.
was something very important that we talked about when two of my friends, and more recently one of yours, a dear friend at church, passed away. And I always get the job of writing the tribute or the memorial comment, the eulogy. And more than anything at this time in our lives, we have a lot to share, but time is growing short. And unless we live to be 1,000, we've got to start sometime. And that's the story of many of us in this time. Persons of age, of wisdom. And wisdom is the third person in that three-way calling. And we'll look to that wisdom to guide us and guide you, hopefully. And you will guide us in sharing your views and news about how you're writing your memoir or how you are moving along the course of your life. Dr. Jeter.
So thank you for listening to either all of this or part of this. And we will certainly be sharing with you how you will be able to hear more in the future. And we also will let you know when we're going to be on and where we're going to be. Thank you.
And thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Jeter. Good
Thank
night.
you, Phyllis. Thank you,
All
Phyllis.
right. All right. Okay. Bye-bye. Stopped.